Good to go. So welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Monday, June 28th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com. Here are the news stories for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. A Nebraska man has been sentenced to nearly 2 years in federal prison for having sex with a girl who was 12 years old at the time. U.S. District Judge Lori Smith Camp sentenced 30-year-old Richard Galvin for sexual abuse of a minor. U.S. Attorney Deborah Gallag said Galvin was sentenced to 21 months in prison and 5 years of supervised release. Prosecutors say Galvin had sex last March with a 12-year-old girl he met while he was working with the Head Start program in Macy, Nebraska on the Omaha Reservation. DNA evidence confirmed that Galvin had had sex with the girl. Former Fort Peck tribal employee has pled guilty to her role in a decade-long scheme in which more than $1 million was stolen from the tribe's credit department. Dolly Crow, 45, of Poplar, Montana, pled guilty to theft from an Indian tribal organization and conspiracy to obstruct a federal audit during a hearing before U.S. Magistrate Keith Strong of Great Falls, Montana, last week. Crow faces up to 5 years in prison and at least 3 years of supervised release on each charge when she is sentenced on October 14th. Crow is one of 6 former tribal and federal employees charged in February and the first to plead guilty. Floodwaters have receded and the Rocky Boys Indian Reservation was out of crisis mode midweek last week, though some evacuees had yet to return their homes, the tribe's chairman has said. A dam that had threatened to overflow was slowly being drained and workers installed a culvert across a flooded road that cut off the reservation's health clinic from access. The 38 families forced to evacuate their homes downstream of the dam may be able to return soon, Chippewa Cree tribal leaders have said. The flooding resulting from more than 4 inches of rain over several days starting on June 17th had made several roads impassable, forced the relocation of the health clinic, and had left more than 200 homes without drinking water and about 500 housing units with water damage last week. The last of the American Indian Code Talkers of South Dakota who served during World War II has been laid to rest. Clarence Wolfguts of Wambly was buried last week, June 22nd, in Black Hills National Cemetery near Sturgis. The 86-year-old Wolfguts died June 16th at the South Dakota Veterans Home in Hot Springs. Wolfguts was one of 11 Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota Code Talkers from South Dakota. During the war, they transmitted messages from an Army general to his chief of staff in the field using their native languages, which the Germans and the Japanese could not translate. People came from all around the country to pay their respects at his funeral, and Governor Mike Rounds asked that flags be flown at half-staff in Wolfguts' honor. Alaska Native corporations are bracing for changes in rules for federal contracts that fueled their growth. The Anchorage Daily News reports one change in Defense Department spending restricts no-bid contracts above $20 million. Sarah Lukin of the Native American Contractors Association in Washington, D.C. says that change is already having a chilling effect. Some of Alaska's largest Native corporations, Nana Development, Arctic Slope Regional, Chagutch, Alaska, and Chenenga, are defense contractors. The Small Business Administration also is tightening rules for minority contracts to respond to critics who say they've been a bad deal for taxpayers. Lieutenant Colonel George Custer and his men of the 7th Cavalry Regiment went into the Battle of the Little BigHorn with flags flying, but they were wiped out. Nearly all their military artifacts were carried away by the victorious Lakota Sioux warriors. A single swallowtail flag was found days later under the body of a fallen soldier. Since 1895, this silk American flag, called Guidon, has been the property of the Detroit Institute of Arts, which has decided to sell it and use the proceeds to build its collection. The Guidon, discovered by Sergeant Ferdinand Culbertson while on a burial detail of the battlefield, has been valued at $2 million to $5 million and will be auctioned off in October by Sotheby's Auction. And they announced that on June 25th, the 134th anniversary of the battle. An Abenaki group has won a $78,000 federal grant to support job training and placement services. The money from the U.S. Department of Labor will go to the Abenaki Self-Help Association NH Indian Council in Vermont. It's part of a $67 million in funds to 256 organizations under the Workforce Investment Act Indian and Native American program. The grant was announced by U.S. Labor Secretary Hilda Solis, who says the money is intended to help American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiian communities. And check out some of the new video at www.livestream.com/Indian Country TV, where we got all kinds of programs from the Nagachi-Wanong Ojibwe language immersion camp going up as we speak. They're being produced and you'll see them there shortly, so have fun over there. And we want to thank you all for joining with us, because that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. You take care. See you again soon.